All right. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Ben Jones, the Batter from Coffee Roasters, coming at you live again from my home little coffee studio. Today, we're going to talk about scales versus scoops. Scales or scoops. Before we can talk about that, we have to lay a little bit of groundwork. We're going to go back to high school science class real quick, just cover a couple definitions. The first thing I want to talk about is the word strength. We use this word in the coffee world a lot. This pops up in our cafe. Someone will come in and of all the beans we offer, we'll say, how can we help you? What would you like? And they say, we would like your strongest coffee. I think people use this word in a lot of different ways. What we mean when we say strength in the coffee world is how much coffee flavoring do you want in your cup of coffee? The strongest traditional cup of coffee you're ever going to get will be a little espresso demi versus a traditional brewed. These will use essentially the same amount of coffee beans for each beverage. The espresso will be much more intense, much more dense in flavor, whereas the drip will be much softer and lighter. Another way to think of that is, again, since we're in high school, let's go back to our childhoods. You all remember the frozen orange juice containers. When you're making juice for the family, you would take out the frozen OJ and you would pour in 1, 2, and 3 cans of water. We've taken a strong concentrate of orange and we've diluted it, made it weaker, making it palatable by adding water, and that is reducing strength. At this point, we're pretty happy. We have our OJ. Now, Dad, I know you're out there. When I was a kid, and we were making the OJ, family of 5. I know you would sometimes sneak in that 4th can of juice to get that to last a little bit longer. Not quite as nice. So, strength. We want to make sure we're balancing out the strength of our coffee, getting things to be to the flavor profile we want them to be. The typical strength that we recommend using, if you're using a scale, we're going to say for every gram of coffee you use, go ahead and add 17 grams of water. If you're using the scoops, we'll flip that a little bit and we're going to say for every 6 ounces of beverage you want to make, go ahead and use 2 tablespoons of ground coffee. That's our standard recipe. It's a really great starting point for any cup of coffee when you're talking the realm of brewed coffee, not espresso. Espresso will be a different situation. We'll talk more on espresso later. But for regular brewed, whether that be through an auto drip brewer or any of the manual brew tools, this is going to be your standard recipe. And to be quite honest, if you follow this recipe, quite likely you're going to be happy. But let's guarantee a little more happiness. I don't know if we can actually guarantee happiness, but we're going to take our best bet at it. Reviewing a few keywords again. Accuracy, precision, and consistency. when you're at home and you're making your coffee, if we're using a scoop, well, we'll decide where this falls in. It doesn't hit any of these the way I like to see them done. If I had to choose accuracy, precision, or consistency, precision is really nice to know exactly what you're looking at down to the 10th of a gram. Accuracy is very important, but between those three, consistency is hands down the most important element when you're working with your recipes. You're on your way to your sophomore science class. You're driving to the school in the morning. It's your first car, so the alignment's a little bit off. Maybe you're wandering all over. You know how to handle that, though. You know how to make it drive consistently in the road. So we're going to make some small adjustments for those types of things. All right. As we move into talking about looking at things, we're going to look at a few more vocabulary words. One is density. Shout out Mr. S. He would say, in a really awful Arnold Schwarzenegger voice, density equals mass over volume. Dirt is mud over water. The density of our beans is a substantial element in creating your consistent recipe. If you buy the exact same coffee every single time and you only use that one coffee, you are my density. Yes, absolutely. You guys are getting me all distracted now, but I don't know much. Back to the Future. Consistency is going to come back to this. For our density, what weighs more? A pound of feathers or a pound of lead? The analogy here, very rough, is Italian roasted coffee. Certain varieties, certain subspecies of coffee beans are going to have a lighter density of bean, meaning they're going to take up a lot more space than other coffees. Our medium roasted, that wonderful Papua New Guinea that Joshua talked about this morning, a lot more dense than our, let's just say, our Italian roast or certain Pacamara variety coffees. That'll be, you get a lot more weight packed in a small space, pound of lead. So that's something we're going to be working with. We've got a little bit of vocabulary tossed out there too, and I would be, well, let's just get down and have some fun with this now. All right, so here we have a scale, and we have some scoops. The scoops that I have are 1 tablespoon each. If you come into the back door from Bronson Cafes, we have some little scoops that are 2 tablespoons that are designed as coffee scoops. So, but we're just going to look at the effect and the impact of scoops as we roll through this. To try to make this moderately scientific, I'm going to take some notes as we go. And let's go ahead and start playing. I have my coffee filter. I'm going to make a cup of coffee in the morning. I'll go and put my filter on. I'll turn on my scale. And I'm going to take my scoop. I'm just going to scoop a heap of beans and put that right in there. Fantastic. Our first scoop, 7.8 grams. That's great. For us to be consistent, every scoop we do now will have to be 7.8 grams. Let's go to this scoop. Let's get a good bundle. We'll put some in. We have 9.4. That's quite not consistent. Let's go and clear that out. You may be noticing that I have 2 different styles of scoops here. Not entirely unintentional. I doubt we all have the same kitchen gear at home. 10.1. 8.8. Clear that out. Let's get another scoop. 10 even. Tear that down. $8.9. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 samples. Our highest scoop is a 10.1, with our lightest being a 7.8. That's a fairly rough average. If we were going scoops, that could throw us off a little bit. So let's say that our coffee brewer called for 19 grams of coffee. I will go and just set that aside, and each tablespoon we saw was hitting between 7.8 and 10 grams of coffee. So I'm just going to take 1, 2 scoops. What are the chances that's going to come right into 19 grams for our pour over? But we're a little bit light. If we then run through our standard dose of water, even if we're not using a scale, even if you're using a measuring cup where you have it filled to a specific spot, your ratio is going to be thrown off substantially. But that's whole beans. Let's see what happens if we start talking about ground coffee. So let's, before we do that, let's look at what happens if we use our scale to weigh our coffee. I can take this and I can just feed some beans in until we're reading 19.6, 18.8, 19 flat. There we go. So we're accurate down to 1/10 of a gram on the scale. That gives me a very precise reading. But what I like more about that is that it gives me consistency throughout. Our range, 7.8 to 10 grams, even if we just round it off and say 8 to 10 grams, that's a 20% shift. Doesn't make me happy. Can't guarantee a good cup of coffee. Makes it much easier for me to use the scale for the consistency that I'm shooting with. Sometimes making better coffee at home, it's not even about making better coffee, it's about making more consistent coffee. Fun experiment. Next time you tie your shoes, think about how you do it. Tying your laces is one of the most consistent things you do every day. You have a specific way you do it every time, and when you try to change that, it throws things off a little bit. All right, let's now look at ground coffee. We're going to make, on this for this experiment, we're going to make a full pot of coffee in our Bonavita coffee brewer. So to make that, I'm going to go ahead and go with a 1.3 liter mass of water. Our recipe works out also using 50 to 65 grams of water of coffee per liter. 50 grams for light, 65 grams for stronger. Let's just put this right into the middle range. And let's go with a nice even 55 grams per liter. So if we do that math, we want to put in 71.5 grams of coffee to give us the optimally consistent dose or optimally consistent brew of beverage. So 71.5 grams of coffee. We also ballpark that up if we're using scoops. 10 scoops tends to be a really fine dose for that, but let's see what happens. Ground coffee, using our scoops. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to make it nice and level. So for consistency's sake, 1, 2. We'll actually be doing 20 scoops because of the it needs to be a 2 tablespoon. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now this coffee that I'm using, I don't know if you can see it here, this is fairly coarse. This is actually much more coarse than we would want to be using for our drip brewer, but this is going to help feed into our other discussion as well. So I pause this at 10, and if you notice my technique, I'm getting a heap, and then I'm just going to level it off with my finger, cup of flour style. So there's 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I didn't grind enough. I'm gonna grind a little bit more real quick. That's an ominous and dubious number there to pause on. Pardon me a moment while I grind some more coffee real quick. All right, where was I? 16 scoops, 17, 18, 19, 20. All right, so that was our equivalent of 10 coffee scoops. Each coffee scoop is 2 tablespoons, so we're doubling up on this. 84.6 grams. We've overshot our 71.5 by a solid 12, 13 grams. Yeah, it's not the end of the world, but it's not going to be as consistent. So our consistency is a little dubious. It'll be okay. We're going to have, honestly, we're going to have a perfectly fine pot of coffee. It's going to be stronger. You're going to perceive more bitterness in it. So you might have this and you might taste this and you might be a little bit disappointed because that much ground coffee with the 1.3 liter water passing through, it's going to over extract and it's going to make it, that over extracted flavor, more intense. I'm going to put a new filter on, clear that out. Excellent. So that was pretty coarsely ground coffee. We're going to go back to our density issue, pound of feather, pound of lead, and we're going to look at what happens with a scoop of coarse coffee versus a scoop of ground coffee, or of finer coffee. So here we have some very finely ground coffee. I'm going to take a scoop. I'm going to level it like a cup of flour, just straight across. And let's see what that gave us. 4.3 grams. Very nice. So fine, level scoop, approximately 4.3 grams. All right, reset this, put a new scale, and we'll tare. Let's go back to our coarse coffee. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to take a scoop, level it, 4.5 grams. 0.2 of a gram isn't entirely much until you start scaling that up. After your 10th scoop, that's 2 grams of coffee. It's substantial. If you're using either a single cup coffee brewer like our Melita style pour over, which I also do really love in the plastic. The scale will give you consistency with it. If you're going out and using an auto brewer, like a batch brewer, we're going to get a lot more consistency and precision out of a scale. This happens to be a probably more scale than most people are going to use. This is called the Akaya Black Pearl. It's what I use just because. Actually, I think I won this one. I use this one because I won it. It's a beautiful and fantastic scale, but the price point is prohibitive for the casual coffee consumer. A high quality kitchen scale will suffice. What you want to look for in a scale is you want it to read out in tenths of a gram, and if you're going to use it for pour over, where you're adding water and you need to catch the running addition of water, you need to have a rapid refresh on it. I'll show you what that means. So there's our mug of water. If I'm going to be pouring water in, I want it to read pretty rapidly. We do stock some scales in our warehouse. I believe it's the Escala. They're great scales. We really like them. They're quite a value for the price point. They have good resolution down to the tenth of a gram. It has a rapid refresh on it. Certain scales, if you go with a really super slim model where they're trying to do the real low profile, you'll actually get quite a bit of heat interference. The heat from your mug and your brewer can cause the that reads, it can cause that to fluctuate and give some false readings. So pick a quality scale if you want to go for that precision and consistency, but overall the consistency. Now, just for another real big for kicks here, if we're scooping and we're doing heaps, so there's a heap and scoop. You know, if this is the morning, you're just scooping a bunch of stuff in, you're just going to be filling that up. This is the least consistent way because we're just tossing a bunch of stuff in there and we're making messes all over. It's the morning. You're like, just make me that cup of coffee, right? We don't even know what we did. Before we know what happened, we got lucky and brewed a perfect pot. So we try to replicate that tomorrow, and it doesn't happen because we weren't paying attention to how we tied our shoelaces. And we're never going to be able to send that bunny around the tree again. We're never going to get it to come out just the way we had it. All right. So, to review, creating good coffee at home. If you can't make it up to the cafes right now because we're at home, or you just choose to brew more coffee at home, which I'm a big fan of, we want to really look for, above all else, consistency of process. Keep in mind the density of your beans, the density of your scoops. If you are into baking and it calls for a cup of flour, there's a huge difference between the amount of flour you get if you are using a cup of flour scooped straight from the bag or the bin versus a cup of flour that's been sifted. The density consistency issue is definitely something to consider. Next thing to remember is our ratios. 17 grams of water for every gram of coffee we're going to use. And I'm going to leave that there in grams because that's what I really think we should be doing. This is going to help us maintain the appropriate strength. Orange juice with 1, 2, and 3 pitchers of water, not diluting it down, not causing strange extractions. If you're brewing larger pots, something more than just the manual pour over. So the 1 gram to 17 is great for pour over. as you start ramping this up, and you're going to be doing it into an auto drip, we're going to want to go ahead and pull 50 to 65 grams. There we go. There's a quick sketch of an auto dripper. That'll work. That's our Bonavita coffee brewer right there. All right. Thank you all so much for coming and hanging out. Let me nudge that over a little bit. I think I'm going to be cutting off our recipe. But thank you all for coming and hanging out today. I believe we have some fun specials going on. Naturally, free shipping on any orders at batdorfcoffee.com over $30. Get that coffee sent safely and directly to your door. We have some fantastic coffees. The Papua New Guinea Nori Kori, as always, the Dancing Goats blend, crowd pleaser if ever I've seen one, and some fantastic decafs. Our decaf Peru, one of my favorite. It is a Swiss water processed, only using water, chemical free process. Hands down, my favorite, and I feel the most superior way to decaf coffee. If we share the video, I believe we're doing a giveaway. So if you're live streaming right now, go ahead and click that share link when we're all done, and share it with your friends. Let people know that we're out there. Make sure people know they can still make consistently good coffee at home. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and toss some questions our way. I want to make sure people are enjoying a cup of coffee and being safe out there. All right. Thank you, everyone. It's Friday. Have a good weekend. Come back through the weekend. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at the Siphon Coffee Brewer. And then I have a special brew party with the Dancing Goats that you all do not want to miss. It's going to be fantastic. Bye.